increase in federal restrictions on marijuana. Right now, it's considered a Schedule 1 drug, which means it has no medical use and a high potential for abuse. Other drugs in that category include heroin and LSD. The Justice Department reportedly wants to move it to Schedule 3. Those substances are considered to have moderate to low potential for dependence. The category includes things like
What
Tylenol
happened
with
to
codeine and
Schedule 1
anabolic
for
steroids.
cocaine?
Once the DOJ makes the recommendation, it will take months to take effect after a public comment period. Neither the Justice Department nor White House have confirmed the change. Coming up, former President Trump calls the gag order in his New York criminal trial unconstitutional. A guest joins us to explain the legality of the gag order when we come back. For a building on campus and barricaded themselves inside as the deadline to disperse expired. Amid the chaos, Columbia closed its campus to non-residential students and the media. The Anti-Semitism Awareness Act cleared a procedural vote in the House with broad support from both Republicans and Democrats. The bill could clear the lower chamber as soon as tomorrow. The White House also commented on the occupation of the Columbia building, calling it absolutely wrong. This came as the Biden administration called on Hamas to accept Israel's latest ceasefire proposal. Former President Trump was in court for day 9 of his New York hush money trial. The judge ruled that Trump violated the gag order 9 times and fined him $9,000. Joining us now to explain Trump's gag order in the New York criminal trial is Janice Heisel, reporter at the Epoch Times. She did a special report on the gag order recently and spoke with many legal experts. Janice, thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you again. Now, bring us up to speed on what happened in court today and Trump's response.
Well, the judge did issue that $9,000 fine. That was $1,000 for each of 9 Truth Social posts that the judge thought violated his order. Now, 5 of those 7 posts were made by the former president himself, and 2 were by his campaign. And most of those focused on his ex-lawyer, Michael Cohen, who is considered a key witness in the case. Now, the judge ordered these posts to be removed today, and I did check,
Congress.
It does look like that all of those posts were removed. If the former president and his staff did not remove those posts, he was looking at possibly being thrown in jail.
And Janice, how are people reacting to the judge's decision to hold Trump in contempt?
Supporters of the former president are actually reposting screenshots of these forbidden posts saying, hey, these are the posts that the judge doesn't want you to see. So that's kind of an interesting reaction there. And legal analyst Jonathan Turley, he has pointed out several apparent contradictions in this judge's order. For example, the judge says, on one hand, hey, you know, it doesn't look like any other courts have ruled whether a simple reposting of someone else's words or an article violates a gag order. And normally under these circumstances, Mr. Turley said that the judge would issue a clarifying order, but instead he issued punishment. And finally, President Trump himself made a statement after court today. He said he was honored to be the Republican nominee, but it's terrible and unconstitutional to restrict his speech under these circumstances. In fact, he called this situation a disgrace.
Now, the gag order itself has been subject to a lot of debate. What is that debate about?
Mainly, that debate centers on 2 controversies. Is it fair, or is that order unconstitutional? The fairness of it is being debated because it is a one-sided order. Now, normally when judges issue a gag order to restrict people's speech in any kind of a criminal or civil case, the idea is that it's generally applied to all parties, prosecution, defense, and any witnesses or anybody connected to the case in any way. This order, however, focuses only on President Trump and his team, not on the prosecution. So the fairness is very much debatable here because it allows his critics, such as Mr. Cohen, his former lawyer, to go out and say whatever he wants publicly, and President Trump is pretty much stuck and just can't respond. Now, on the constitutional question, that is, you know, one of the biggest things that makes it a a huge question here is that this is happening in the context of a presidential election, which has ramifications for our entire nation. And so that is another huge reason this is being debated.
Given all that you just laid out, how is the judge justifying his order?
This all came about because the prosecutors complained that Trump has intimidated people, they say, with his social media posts. They say that, they're expressing concern that witnesses might be reluctant to participate in the trial. And the judge said, okay, so I'm going to tailor this order narrowly to protect President Trump's free speech rights while protecting the integrity of the criminal process.
On that note, could the gag order be reversed?
Yes, President Trump's lawyers have appealed, and also an independent New York lawyer who has no connection to Trump or his team. He's just a concerned citizen who happens to be an attorney in New York. He has filed a challenge, and I believe that's due for a hearing next week. He argues that any gag order must be tied to an effort to protect someone's constitutional rights. Usually, it's the right of the defendant to a fair trial, and it's going against the prosecution from making all kinds of statements in the public that could taint the jury pool. But Judge Marchand's order makes no such linkage, according to this lawyer, and he says it's just to further the state's interest in the fair administration of justice. But the problem with that is that claim could be made about virtually any scenario. And so this could possibly encourage prosecutors to start trying to seek gag orders against whoever might be in front of a judge. And that could pose a concern for every American. In fact, one expert I talked to told me this is much bigger than Trump.
Janice Heisel, reporter at the Epoch Times, thank you so much for joining us. Law enforcement is now questioning two others.
The U.S. Marshals has a fugitive task that we are a part of, that they went to go and serve this warrant as any other day that they were able to do. And unfortunately, this individual decided to greet them with gunfire, and it just turned into a tragic event for the officers that were originally out on the scene and then the officers that responded to try and assist.
The officers were serving a warrant for possession of a firearm by a convicted felon in the Shannon Park neighborhood. Police identified the suspect as Terry Clark Hughes Jr. Four other officers were shot and wounded, but are in stable condition. A solemn procession in Charlotte earlier today paid tribute to one of the officers killed. Authorities are investigating the incident. President Biden reacted to the shooting, calling the officers heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice. The Senate today explored how Chinese money laundering organizations are profiting from fentanyl trafficking. But is the CCP involved in this business? NTD's Sam Wong has the story.
$1 billion in annual revenue, driven by one of the deadliest narcotics in the world. On Tuesday, the Senate Caucus on International Narcotics Control delved into China's money laundering efforts in the fentanyl supply chain.
Chinese money laundering organizations have gotten very good at shielding ill-gotten gains. These organizations launder cartel cash quicker and cheaper than competitors, often with a money-back guarantee.
Of all drug overdoses in the U.S., fentanyl remains a primary perpetrator. A small amount that fits on the tip of a pencil is enough to be lethal. Fentanyl productions can be traced all the way back to mainland China, where most of the drug's precursor chemicals are made. Experts say combating the flow of fentanyl requires international efforts.
Criminals based in the People's Republic of China have emerged as the professional money launderers of choice for Mexican drug traffickers seeking to move their funds around the world. But this is a global problem, and global problems require global solutions.
According to a recent report by the House Select Committee on the CCP, fentanyl kills an average of more than 200 Americans per day, which leads to a record drop in life expectancies across the country. The report says the Chinese Communist Party has been directly subsidizing the production and exports of fentanyl precursors through tax rebates.
Through these subsidies, the Chinese government is supporting the flow of fentanyl into the United States and other countries. It doesn't matter what part of our country, which political party you're in. This is just tearing families, communities apart.
As of this year, Fentanyl has been front and center at several diplomatic meetings between Washington and Beijing. During a trip to China last week, Secretary of State Antony Blinken addressed the communist regime's role in supplying the synthetic opioid. And earlier this month, President Biden also raised the issue of fentanyl in a phone call with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Sam Wang, NTD News.
Coming up, growing demand for electricity is in large part coming from the AI industry. We hear from a tech expert about how the demand for data centers is creating a critical power gap. And in the NBA, LeBron James' Lakers have been eliminated from the playoffs, so what's his future hold? Dave Martin joins us to discuss his options when we come back. Electricity shortage in the coming years. NTD's Daniel Monahan spoke with Dr. Eric Woodall, a tech infrastructure management company founder, for analysis.
Data centers, the so-called brains of the internet, are industrial warehouses packed with rows upon rows of servers. They process, communicate, and store the data behind everything from bank records, online retailers, and social media platforms to Netflix shows and your personal iPhone videos. Many analysts laud data centers as one of the fastest growing sectors of the real estate market. But the industry may soon find itself hitting a wall as local communities put up increasing resistance to its seemingly insatiable appetite for power and water. A January report by Newmark, a commercial real estate advisory firm, says growth is increasingly held back by land and power availability. The report said the rapid growth of AI and other technologies is fueling the demand. Data warehouses consumed 17 gigawatts of electricity in 2022, or about 4% of total U.S. consumption. That is projected to double to 35 gigawatts by 2030. Eric Woodall, the founder of the tech infrastructure management company Amaris, referred to data centers as energy hogs.
The increased power demand due to data centers coming online and electric vehicles is growing at the same time that our government is reducing power production through fossil fuel power plants.
Woodall says they're predicting an 83 gigawatt gap between demand and power production within the next 3.5 years.
And 83 gigawatts sounds like a lot of power, obviously. In comparison, New York City is 5.5. So the gap is massive, and it's going to have major impacts on us down the road.
The Amaris founder says a mere 10-foot
windmills
square
and
space
solar
within the
panels ain't
average
gonna
data
handle.
center consumes about 10 times as much electricity as the average home. According to Woodall, AI computing puts much higher demands on energy, using 5 to 10 times more power than traditional computing. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD